Hi, people. Moin away from Bakirgan as always, and or as usual. In this in this section, or specifically in this video, I'm going to discuss, as you can tell from the header, what at the esoteric elaboration on mental illness. That's specifically the subject matter or the topic at hand here. And yeah, the header speaks for itself of this video. Okay, I'm going to explain esoteric. I'm going to give you an esoteric take, or I'm going to explain mental illness from an esoteric or spiritual perspective. Okay, I'm going to tell you what the straightforward, down to earth, layman, spiritual cause is of mental illness, essentially. And, what the root is, essentially, of mental illness, as opposed to what you'll find if you just plain and simply Google information out there. Now, I'm going to read from a PDF file here. You can find this file linked in the description below. You can download it at your own convenience. This video is simply an elaboration on everything I wrote in this file, as well as giving you a bit more elaborate information in a freestyle manner. The esoteric application to how the world works and when it comes to manifestation of thoughts, intentions, etc., and how it all works in relation to mental health. Mentally healthy people, normal people, follow the outline mental, astral, physical, thereby meaning that someone has intentions, thoughts, etc., and these manifest in the physical or real world, depending on general factors. With someone that is seriously mentally ill, the bond between the astral and physical is interrupted, either partially or fully. So instead of mental, astral, physical, it's mental, astral, and even here, corruption is present to a certain degree, thereby giving birth as a quote unquote giving birth to deformed or malformed thoughts and intentions that are worthless and have little to no merit. Um, yeah. Apologies in advance if you maybe catch some minor typos or some punctuation marks and other symbols missing in the PDF file. I have no idea why, when I converted it from a Word document to a PDF, why it like all of a sudden ate a couple of apostrophes and crap like that. Doesn't matter. Just focus on the subject matter at hand, please. The world isn't perfect, and even me at my level, neither am I. Regardless of, yeah, you know what time it is, okay? God is the only one that is perfect. Father is the only one that's perfect, period. Now, to elaborate on what I said here, yeah, people that are familiar with the Kabbalah specifically know this. Listen, for someone that's mentally ill, right? If you simply Google them, etc., if you look up essentially what kind of mental illness they have, you'll find the label. Medical science has already labeled everything and whatnot. You name it, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, blah, 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 split personality disorder. It just goes on and on and on, okay? Which is convenient and handy and practically applicable up to a certain degree or extent. But the problem is that medical science can't explain to you exactly what the problem is. They can slap a label on it and categorize it and so on and so forth, and they can provide minor alleviation at best. But that's obvious because medical science works purely from a material vantage point. And you can't heal someone or you can't heal something, an affliction of an immaterial or spiritual nature, by going down the material path. No. Any successes or advances that you make are purely coincidental, and you'll only get, hypothetically speaking, a centimeter in terms of progress. You'll make a centimeter of progress, hypothetically or metaphorically speaking, but you will definitely not get far 9 out of 10 times. That's why the general consensus in global society is that if you're quote unquote nuts, so you're mentally ill, then you're out of luck. Then, yeah, there's nothing or no one that can help you and you're left to fend for yourself. And yeah, too bad for you. You're shit out of luck, blah, blah, blah. And that's all. Yeah, no. Okay, in reality, there is always hope. But yeah, definitely not from medical science. At the very least, okay, as is the case up to present date or at the date of this recording. Now, in relation to what I explained here, okay, from a spiritual point of view, you need to understand, simply speaking to laymen, you don't have to be knowledgeable on the occult or anything like that. So any layman that are watching this video, I'm going to keep it as simple as possible to the point where even a donkey could understand it, a dunce even would be able to understand it. Okay, not that I'm insinuating anything, of course. If you don't understand it, then yeah, then you need to essentially go over it several times. But in any case, this is for everyone. So even the regular people that do not have any knowledge on the occult whatsoever, the universe, God created the universe in such a way that everything follows the outline mental, astral, physical, like I wrote down here. Mental, astral, physical. So the thing is that your thoughts come from higher up, from God Himself at the ultimate point or at its most ultimate point, and then it makes its way through a specific pattern within the universe on an esoteric level, okay, on a spiritual level. That is known as the tree of life, and that's specifically a reference to the Kabbalah. Now, you don't have to worry if you don't know what the tree of life is or what the Kabbalah is, etc., etc. Just keep in mind that everything follows a spiritual outline. The same way that, for example, if you want to drive home from work, you need to follow a specific route in order to get home. Okay? And by default, God created the universe in such a way that the optimal route is always taken. So all thoughts and all actions, etc., come from higher up, come from above. And then it follows that outline, the likes of which I explained, just a general spiritual outline, to the point where it reaches to you formulating a thought, as in a thought entering your mind. You conceive a thought in your mind, and then you actually go through the steps to the point where it becomes a reality. Example, you're thinking about buying a new car. That itself is a thought, specifically. You thinking about buying that car, that's part of the astral. That's what you need to keep in mind here, astral. Okay, mental, astral, physical, yeah, you don't have to worry about this or this. Just keep that in mind. That's the astral that you're seeing here. You thinking about buying that car in the example that I gave is the astral. Okay, you formulating the thought and literally going over everything. Now, you're thinking about buying a new car. What do you do in general? You're thinking about money, as in, hey, listen, do I have enough money to buy a new car? Can I afford it? Can I afford to maintain the car that I intend on buying, or that I have my sights set on, blah, 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 etc., etc. You literally go through all the motions in your mind in general, at the very least partially, either partially or fully, regardless of how minor it is, it's still a thought. And then that thought eventually spills over into the material world, and it leads to this, the physical. So you thinking about buying a car, as long as your intentions are strong enough, you're serious about buying your car, you go over all the motions, everything you need to keep in mind. What do? You go to a dealership, you look, before you do that, you look stuff up online, as in, hey, where can I find the specific car that I'm focused on? What is more convenient? Can I like have it customized by a manufacturer and then pick it up at the nearest dealership, or can I simply go to a dealership where the car is already in existence and present and waiting for me, in a matter of speaking? That whole process is the astral going to the physical. See what I mean? You essentially had an idea, you had a notion, an idea came to mind, you conceived this idea, or this idea was conceived and it entered your mind, and then it went from your mind, okay, to everything, etc., 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 that leads to it essentially spilling out into the physical world. So it becomes a reality. Thoughts becoming reality. That's what this means. Mental, astral, physical. That's the default outline that the entire universe adheres to. For something to essentially exist in a material world, every living creature, everything, okay, its existence started with the formulation of it, as in it essentially being thought into existence. Another example I can give is an inventor, for example. Okay, the guy that invented the radio, the idea came to his mind first. That's the astral. The idea came to his mind to develop a contraption that would make it so that sounds can be broadcast globally, etc., etc. And then he actually went into it in detail, and it required substantial thought based on the magnitude of what he's trying to accomplish. Okay, an invention that is essentially timeless, that can be used globally, anytime, anywhere, under the right conditions and circumstances. So he thought about everything, as in, hey, how is it going to work? How is it going to reach someone at the other end of on the other end of the world? How is it going to be broadcasted? What specific metric can I use? Okay, and that's how frequencies came into existence, AM and FM and all of that. The entire process, it all started with the formulation of an idea. And that's the astral. Even the idea came from higher above. It came from ultimately God Himself, so to speak. Okay, literally and figuratively, not so to speak. And then that whole bridge that the inventor gap, the guy that invented the radio, he literally went over everything and he patented his first stuff. He tested everything out, and then he was like, hooray, I created the radio. the very first model of the radio, and people, as time passed, other scientists or inventors simply refined it. It's the concept of refining the wheel. The wheel was already invented, you simply refine the wheel to make it optimal for global use, mass usage. Astral, physical, okay? So see what I mean? That notion, that thought became an actual physical thing. It manifested, literally by definition, manifested into the real world, into the physical world. That's how everything works in the world, okay? Every thought you have and everything essentially may or may not manifest depending on general factors. Like I pointed out here, on general factors. So if your, for example, intentions aren't strong enough, or you lack the proper application of your intentions, or the proper application of your thoughts, or the conditions or circumstances that you were subject to did not were unfortunate, or they were misfortunate, or they did not essentially align with what you were thinking, that with essentially conceiving the idea, I mean, then nothing's going to come of it. Then you, and the example that I gave about you buying a car or thinking about buying a car, let's just say that you don't have enough money, or you live in a location where you can easily take the bus. You are not going to, the thought of you buying a car is not going to physically manifest, because the conditions and the circumstances, so you specifically not having money being the condition, as well as the whole bus thing being a condition, or a circumstance, it not being favorable, or it being inconvenient to the point where you opt for the easiest option at that moment, which is to essentially either take the bus and simply wait, or wait until you have enough money. So see, that's what happened. Even then, it's still a thought that manifested physically, but it manifested differently. So what happened in the material world is, even then, it's a consequence of that, but it simply took a different route. See what I mean? By default, the easiest option is always taken, is always chosen, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. Even in the rare instances that the difficult option is chosen, as in someone seeks out the most difficult option ever instead of doing things the easy way, then there is a reason for that, a specific reason, and that's a rare exception. But even then, it still falls within the scope of what I explained, the complete outline. In any case, that's what I mean by mental, astral, physical. This is the universal law that God has created the world, and that the world needs to adhere to because He wills it. Every living creature lives more or less, lives by this, in a matter of speaking, more or less, lives by this outline. Okay? So that's what I mean by mental, astral, physical. Okay? That's what I mean. Understood? Clear. Now, this is what the average person that is mentally healthy, more or less, the outline that they follow. Whereas with someone that is mentally ill, the bond between these two, the astral and the physical, is interrupted. For example, someone that has some kind of disease or some kind of affliction like schizophrenia, the person has suffers from split personality disorder, the person has multiple personalities. Okay, this bridge between the astral and the physical is hopelessly interrupted. Something's wrong there. The bridge, metaphorically speaking, was either destroyed. It was destroyed with dynamite. For example, trauma being the metaphor for dynamite. There's a blockade there, or it is severely damaged. Bottom line is, there is an interruption here between the arch between astral and physical. So between them formulating thoughts the way that the average person does that is mentally healthy, and it actually manifesting in the physical world, it does not it doesn't make it there. Okay, it's like someone traveling from home to work. You drive home from to work. You drive. Home from work, and then all of a sudden the route that you're used to taking all of a sudden has some kind of blockade or something, and there is no alternative route. What are you going to do then? There's nothing you can do. Let's just say that you always cross the bridge and that bridge is completely blown to smithereens. Exactly, you're stuck. So you're stuck essentially going back to work. You're stuck in the neighborhood that your job is located in, the building that you work in, but you can't make it home. It's the same thing with mentally ill people. With mentally ill people, they don't follow the outline mental, astral, physical. And this is not deliberate, obviously. They have no say in the matter. There is no concept of free will or anything like that. No. I'm simply saying they follow that outline, period. They don't follow the outline that the average person follows. A mentally healthy person follows this outline. Like I explained, with someone that's mentally ill, it's this outline, mental, astral. There is no physical, essentially. I mean, there is a physical, but There is no connection between the two. You can essentially effectively rule out this hyphen between astral and physical. The entire, instead of hyphen, you can simply put a right slash here, indicating a complete, like I said, a complete disruption in spiritual communication, if you will. What that means, simply put, is that someone that is mentally ill, seriously mentally ill, all of their thoughts and intentions literally stay in their mind. They do, and they stay in their astral body. They stay in their mind. Their astral body. When I say astral body, people that aren't knowledgeable on the occult, I simply refer to your spirit. That's what the average person calls it, your spirit. You consist of mental, astral, physical. The astral is your spirit, okay? The same way that every living creature in the world needs of an astral body, so a spirit, an astral body, so a spirit, and a physical body to be present in the material world. In that same context, okay? Your physical body needs your spirit. Without your spirit, your physical body is literally just going to collapse completely and boom, you're going to drop dead. That's the definition of dropping dead. So yeah, that's what is meant. That's what I mean when I say astral body, just so you know. I simply mean spirit, loosely put. With mental, I simply mean your higher thought processes that come from above, that come from divinities itself, that come from the quote unquote divine side. Whether you believe in it or not, it does not matter. Okay, facts are facts. Now, like I said, mentally ill people, the thoughts that are manifested in their head, essentially, that their astral bodies manifest, or the thoughts that are conceived in their mind slash astral bodies, it cannot make it to the real world, the physical world, because it gets interrupted. Like I said, in the metaphorical example, the thoughts want to cross over from that bridge, and they're using that bridge to cross over to to reality, to the physical world. But with someone that is mentally ill, their mind can't make it across. The thoughts that their mind conceived can't make it across to the real world. In the examples that I gave above, in the examples that I gave earlier. So what happens is that their thoughts simply stay in their minds, and the person simply cannot discern what's happening in the material world, so the real world, so actuality, from their thoughts. So the person automatically views their thoughts in their minds as in reality, as in what is actually happening. And that is mental illness, plain and simply put, in a nutshell. That's why, for example, in the examples that I gave earlier, a guy's thinking about buying a car, right? That were to be if the guy is normal. What I said earlier would apply if the guy was normal. The guy buys a car, the guy thinks about buying a car, he conceives everything, etc., yada yada. He simply goes to a dealership, or etc., or whatever, and he buys a car. Now that's based on the precedent that the guy is normal. He's like mentally healthy, etc., more or less. He's just your average guy. Now, if the guy were mentally ill, as in seriously mentally ill, it doesn't matter what kind of mental illness he has. He can have schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, split personality disorder, you name it. It just goes on. It does not matter really in the broad scope of things. If the guy is mentally ill, seriously mentally ill, then the guy will essentially, again, if the guy is seriously mentally ill, then the guy will essentially, how should I put it? The guy will he'll formulate the thought in his head as in, hey, I'm going to buy a car. But the guy, again, he's mentally ill, so there is an interruption here. The thoughts can't make it across to the physical world. They can't literally manifest by definition. The thoughts can't actually go into the physical world and start and actually could undertake the actions, or make him, better said, undertake the actions that leads to him buying a car, becoming him actually having a car in real life. Nah. His thoughts literally just stay here in the astral. They stay in his mind. And what happens is that the guy is so mentally ill that in the reality, for example, in the physical world, the guy literally just walks to work every single day because he has no choice. And he does that based on impulse, because it's a basic motor function that requires little to no spiritual energy whatsoever. And all the thoughts literally just stay in the guy's head. So in the guy's head, okay, he has a car, he's driving a car, all the while walking alongside the freaking freeway with people, with him, for example, due to his lack of self-awareness, all of a sudden just walking in the middle of the road, all the while people honking, people driving past him and honking, get off the road, you nut job, blah, 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 okay? Stop walking in the middle of the road, you dumbass, do you want to die? It just goes on, okay? My point is, in the guy's head, due to the process that I explained and or outlined, in the guy's mind and or head, in his astral body, in his spirit, he is completely, again, he is, he already has a car. He has his car because the thoughts literally stayed there, but there was no physical manifestation of it. So what he, in his mind, he's like driving a car. He's like, la 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 la, I'm enjoying my new BMW, I'm enjoying my Bugatti, what the hell ever. But in the physical world, the guy is literally just walking alongside freaking Highway A1, and and yeah, he has no conception. He see that's what I mean. This guy took again this entire process being interrupted. Okay, regardless of whether it's a minor, mild, or severe interruption, and regardless of the duration, my point is the guy completely is out of touch with reality. He has no concept of reality. For him, what's taking place in his mind, due to the process that I explained and or outlined, again, he has no concept of reality. He views that what's happening in his head, he sees what's happening in his mind as reality. Okay? Whereas in actual reality, so in the actual material plane, you know, nothing is taking place. Nothing is taking place. And that's how you essentially get guys, for example, that are clearly mentally ill. The guy's talking to himself, and the guy's a freaking nut job. He's homeless. He's a hobo. And the guy just talks to himself. He screams obscenities and stuff like that. Like I said, the connection is interrupted. I've done several videos on mental illness already. I would recommend that you check them out. I'm going to link them in the description below as well as the root article on mental illness or just maintaining one's mental health in general. And and yeah, that's just it. Now, I'm going to continue. See below images for a Kabbalistic overview. This, people, is what the tree of life is. This is what it looks like. In layman's terms, let's just put it really, let me just keep it as simple as possible for you. God is here, in a matter of speaking. God essentially influences the world. He does whatever he wants, etc. And this is the outline, the spiritual outline that every creature in the universe has to adhere to. It starts here, and then you've got kind of like a ping pong effect where it goes from left to right, right to left, etc. Bing, 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 bing. Okay? All the other aspects you're seeing here are simply aspects of creation. I'm not going to get into that, okay? You can also check that out. I'm going to link that in the description below as well if you want to know specifically what the Kabbalah is like, etc., etc. Long story short, these are simply aspects of creation. That's it, okay? And these are all symbolized by planets. That's why you're seeing planets here specifically. I'm just going to give one example for the sake of clarity. When God created the world, God essentially said, okay, there is going to be chaos and violence, and there's going to be courage and warfare and everything. Just violence embodied. The whole concept, existential concept of violence, of essentially severity and strength. And all of that is signified by the planet Mars. So Mars essentially is simply the symbolization at a spiritual level of chaos and strength and violence throughout the entirety of the world. Everything that has to do with the concept of strength and severity in the world. Think about murder, think about violence, bloodshed, warfare, everything you can think of in the world, both good and bad. Courage, the ability to actually just push through any kind of adversity whatsoever with sheer force, just strength embodied. All of that falls under Mars. This is literally, that's why they're called aspects of creation. When God created the world, he said, okay, there's going to be strength, there's going to be this, there's going to be that, and all of these will be symbolized by, for example, planets that I'll create, Mars, and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's just a minor sideline to explain to you in layman's terms. If you're the average person that has no idea what the Kabbalah is, that's what it is. Now, the part that you're only supposed to focus on is this. This is the earth, plain and simply put. This is the real world, the material world we all live in and that we're all attuned to, so to speak. This is the spirit world, okay? All you need to get, that's why the spirit world here is signified. If people obviously recognize this symbol as a symbol of the moon. That's because the moon deals with the spirit world from the most generic perspective you can think of. Classically, traditionally, yeah, the moon deals with all of this, okay? That's all you need to remember. The moon deals with this. Now, like I explained to you, mental, astral, physical, this is the mental. Everything comes from higher up, okay? Every action in the world, everything, down to the smallest individual, comes from higher up. It makes its way in a ping pong like fashion, bing, 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 and it reaches here. It reaches the spirit world. This is your astral body, like I said. This is your spirit, okay, at an individualistic level, as in you're thinking about buying a car. You're the guy, you're thinking about, hey, buying a car. With the average person, like I said, the thought formulation process goes from here, you thinking about buying a car because in your all of that action is taking place in your spirit, and then it makes its way across here to the real world. Okay, when it spills over into the real world, it literally manifests you actually buying a car, regardless of what route you have to take. The likes of which I already explained all of that earlier. Okay, as in you going to a dealership, you checking out cars, you checking your bank account. Hey, do I have enough money to buy this car? Can I maintain the car on a monthly basis? Blah blah blah. Yeah, that is this bridge here, going from here to here. That's this bridge. You can ignore the two other bridges. Okay, just ignore it. They're non-applicable. They're not relevant to the subject matter at hand. These two. This is, like I said, this is what it essentially looks like for a normal person, a mentally healthy person. This is what it looks like for someone that's mentally ill. That's why I wrote down here, mentioned pathway interrupted. The pathway I mentioned is interrupted. The same concept, okay? Idea coming from God, bing, 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 in general. Here, even for someone that is severely mentally ill, just as a sideline, generally speaking, there is some corruption that starts like either here or halfway. Bottom line is, someone that's mentally ill in general has a lot more bad thoughts than they have good thoughts. It all depends on how severely mentally ill they are. So these people, it all depends, okay? They can be, the thing is that some people are so mentally ill that they're corrupt to the core spiritually. But you don't have to worry about that to make it too complicated for yourself. All you need to focus on is this, like I said, from here to here, okay? Your astral body, your spirit, your mind, etc. Yeah, thoughts make it all the way over here. I already explained what happens with a mentally healthy person. Now, for someone that's mentally ill, like I said, you see here that the bridge essentially has been broken down. It's interrupted. Their thoughts want to go from here to actually manifest it in reality. As in the guy, I want to buy a car, etc., but the guy is freaking mentally ill. The guy has like schizophrenia or some other mental illness, a serious mental illness. The guy thinks about buying a car. Those thoughts that are necessary, okay, to actually manifesting it in the real world, they don't make it across. Those thoughts go like this, and they're like, hey, wait a minute, there's no bridge here. Shit, I can't cross the line. I mean, no, there is nothing here. I can't go to the physical world. I can't go to the real world. So what they do, they simply linger here in this entire vicinity, and they simply simmer here, and not all the while, nothing happens in the real world. And what do you think? Like I said, someone like this literally cannot distinguish between what's going on in their mind and what's actually happening in the real world. So their mind essentially becomes completely fractured to the point where they literally cannot comprehend what's happening in the real world. They only operate, generally speaking, depending on how severely mentally ill they are, on an impulsive basis or on an impulsivity level. Like I explained, basic motor functions, going to the bathroom, eating, drinking, etc. Basic things that require little to no energy, no spiritual energy. Okay, you simply do shit like that on a reflex, on the go, on the fly, whatever. But for someone that's mentally ill, like I said, depending on the severity in general, that's what's going to happen. These thoughts will keep simmering here, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And what happens? The guy thinks that he bought a car. In his mind, he's like, yeah, baby, I'm driving my Bugatti. Yeah, baby, drift. Yeah. And in reality, nothing's happening. In reality, the guy's literally just walking in the freaking rain to wherever it is that he's heading to. The guy has no conception of reality whatsoever. And that's essentially it, the likes of which I explained. So yeah, that's all in general. What you need to keep in mind is that it depends on the level of the level of mental illness, how severely mentally ill they are, decide how interrupted here is. People that are like intermediarily mentally ill, here is interrupted but only halfway. So some thoughts make it through. The thing is that other thoughts don't make it through. That's why it's like these people have amnesia. They don't remember half of the shit they did. They're like, hey, wait a minute. Now, I'm not saying, bear in mind, I'm not referring to mundane thoughts, like thoughts that don't matter, that your mind automatically says, hey, listen, this stuff isn't important, okay? What you had for dinner isn't important. You're like the important CEO of a company. You've got a lot more important stuff on your mind, so that stuff enjoys priority. So no one gives a rat's ass about the fact that you had beans for lunch and whatnot. So yeah, just ignore all of that. That's normal, okay? That's completely normal, mentally healthy and everything. But like I said, someone that is severely mentally ill, with someone like that, their general intentions and serious thoughts and ideas that are necessary to make any advancement or progress in life overall, from a day-to-day perspective, within a mundane context, as well as beyond. They don't make it across. If the person is just mentally ill up to a mild or mundane or minor level, then the pathway isn't interrupted completely. Some thoughts still make it through, so the person can still get things done. The person can still bluntly put get shit done, so to speak. But again, for someone that is severely mentally ill, in the worst case scenario, this pathway is completely cut off. So no thought makes it across. Now, you might wonder, Moreno Ravenberg. So, okay, if everything you say, correct, obviously, okay, no problemo. But how do these people sometimes still do things like that require extensive thinking, as in they act out? Granted, they do horrible stuff. They do really horrible shit that, yeah. They like go out and stab someone. They do something that clearly gives away that they're nuts, that they're mentally ill. They act out essentially, but even acting out, Moreno Ravenberg, is acting out not required? Does it not require a serious thought process or intent based on what you explain? The answer is yes, and here it comes, okay? There are, like I said, with someone that is mentally ill, generally speaking, these thoughts simmer here, right? And general horrible things that happen to them in life, like childhood trauma, you name it, like being abused, either sexually or physically, you name it. Horrible stuff that happened to them in life traumatized them, and it automatically causes negative thoughts to actually fester. And if even the positive thoughts the person has cannot make it across, what do you think is going to happen? Okay, it's going to keep simmering here, and there's a high probability of these thoughts turning into negative thoughts. And the thing is that these negative thoughts have a way of making it across. Now, they don't make it across in a nice, clear way. They make it across in some kind of weird, like up and downsy kind of way, like zigzag in a zigzag kind of fashion. And they arrive in the physical world. Not a lot of thoughts make it across. Only maybe 1 in 10, hypothetically speaking, just for the sake of argument. And that's how actually it manifests. It acts out, how the person acts out in reality. Okay, like the example I gave. Okay, our guy that was going in our example that was going to buy a car. The guy is mentally ill, so in the guy's mind, he actually thinks about buying a car, etc. But the only place where he bought a car is in his own freaking mind, and in reality, the guy's like completely nuts, and he's literally just alongside the street. All the while, in his own head, he's driving a car and he's living it up and all of that. Now, with someone like that, okay, there are going to be a substantial amount of negative thoughts as well, for the reasons I already just mentioned a minute ago or explained. Now, obviously, due to this interruption, not all of these negative thoughts are going to make it across, but in the zigzag kind of fashion I explained, they will be able to, not all of them, but only 1 out of 10, okay? Understand that the basic concept also applies to the good thoughts. 1 out of 10 good thoughts will find a way to make it across, but in general, yeah, no. Okay, and the bad thoughts have a way of essentially making it across in a more and having a deeper impact. Because as the saying goes, the only news is bad news. So when someone does something bad, people are definitely a lot more inclined to remember them for what they did wrong rather than what they did right. Now, what else was I gonna say? Yeah. In any case, yeah. That bad thought will simply manifest. And well, our guy that was going to buy a car had a horrible idea of stabbing someone. Like, hey, I'm going to stab the guy that did not want to sell me my car because, the guy was a douchebag. I had to go to another dealer, so I'm going to stab the motherfucker. And the guy just goes out, and in his mind, he actually stabs someone. Okay, he actually stabs someone that is that he believes to be the dealer. But like I said, all of this took place in his mind. So in actuality, the guy just goes out and impulsively, because that idea made it across haphazardly, okay, into the real world, into the material world, the guy literally just goes out and he stabs a completely random person, all the while screaming, you fucking greedy car dealer. And the person that's getting stabbed has no idea what the hell is happening because the person's not a car dealer, nothing. And the person will simply think this crazy guy is literally just some guy that confuses me for someone else, a car dealer based on what he's saying. But yeah, at that point, the person is too busy thinking about not getting stabbed and not dying for a horrible stab wound. You've seen situations like these work out in real life, people. So yeah, you can see exactly what I'm getting at and what I mean. That's how all of that takes place. Okay, that's the concept behind it all. Okay, again, a last example that I'm going to give is, for example, a city being in existence and there is a road and people from abroad, you name it, tourists, investors, all of those people, they essentially come to the city. And what do you think is going to be the case if the road, the infrastructure is nice and clean, there's a nice bridge that people cross in order to actually get to that city, then the city is going to thrive because the infrastructure is good. It attracts investors, it attracts tourists, it attracts people that stimulate the economy and stimulate everything. Okay, the general well-being of said city. Now, if the same city has horrible infrastructure, as in a bridge that has nothing but potholes in it and whatnot, a bridge that looks dangerous, horribly dangerous to cross, then the majority of good people are going to stay away, people that would make the city thrive, and the city is going to turn into a shithole, plain and simple. And it's the same thing, okay? That same concept applies to mental illness. And what do you think is going to happen? Imagine someone being so mentally ill, in this metaphor that I just gave about the city and the infrastructure, okay? Obviously, the city being the real world and the person's overall general well-being, both spiritually and physically, but primarily physically. And then that bridge, essentially, being the infrastructure that the thought and essentially the foreign people are the thoughts essentially. These thoughts won't be able to make it across that bridge. Worst case scenario, because the bridge is non-existent, it was blown up. Like I said, as a metaphor, we'll use dynamite, and dynamite is simply a metaphor in itself for trauma. So someone faced horrible trauma in their life, boom, bridge gets blown up in the metaphor. And then there is no bridge. The bridge is overlooking a deep valley. Any person that wants to cross is going to fall into the freaking depths or the abyss below. Now, what do you think is going to happen? Every good person that had good intentions is going to turn around. It's going to be like, oh, fuck this, I'm out of here. And our beloved city that had so much potential is going to turn into a shithole, like I said, due to horrible infrastructure or completely absent infrastructure. Vital infrastructure, like the bridge itself. That's vital, all important. And what do you think is going to happen? The city is going to be abandoned, and the city is going to attract nothing but work less than nothing delinquents. See what I mean? The bad thoughts or the worthless delinquents is a metaphor for negative thoughts, genuinely corrupted thoughts. Okay, this even plays out in real life. Generally speaking, when you go to a city and the city is a shithole, what do you think is going to happen? The city is going to be a harbinger, a harbinger. The city is going to harbor nothing but negative elements. We're talking about crack whores, junkies, deadbeats, people like that. The city is not going to attract the right kind of people. It's going to attract the equivalent of vermin. And that's what I mean. That's why it's a shithole. Parasites, vermin, feeds on shit. I'm sorry that I have to be so crude, but you know what I mean. Yeah, now the metaphorical bridge is blown up. So what do you think is going to happen? Parasites and wild animals, okay, also representing negative thoughts like mountain lions and cougars and bears, are going to be able to make their way across because they're going to simply go into the depths of the valley and they're going to take the long route because they're not shy, they have no standards, so they're going to wade through all the crap that you need to wade through in order to get to that shithole. And before you know it, the shithole is completely infested with nothing but negativity. That's exactly what I mean, okay? Any good things will stay away. Any good elements will stay away. It's the same thing. For someone that's horribly mentally ill, depending on the severity of the level or the level of severity of their mental illness, all the good thoughts, the constructive thoughts that essentially propel someone forward in life and that make someone better and does nothing but the excellence for us, but bring out the excellence in us. These thoughts will stay away because they're going to be, oh, no, fuck this, the pathway that leads to the material world is completely interrupted. I'm not going to bother with it. Why the hell would I bother? I'm just going to stay here. And as a result, here gets completely ignored. So again, that's how you have someone that's so horribly mentally ill that they have no conception or little to no conception of the real world. They live in their own reality. They don't live in the reality that the entire world or the majority of the world lives in. They live in some horribly alternate dimension that is here, filled with corrupted thoughts and whatnot. And they have little to no perception of what's actually going on in the material world. That's what I mean. Ugh, was a mouthful, but yeah, got it done. Now I'm simply going to continue. The first image is of someone that is mentally healthy, and the second one of an ill person. Yeah, I already went over all of that. See, here it's nice and clean, bridge is nice and clean, infrastructure is good. Here, yeah, bridge is blown up by quote unquote dynamite, and yeah, the real world is completely ignored, and yeah, mental illness. Notable illnesses explained esoterically to serve as an example. Schizophrenia, specifically split personality disorder. See definition here by the medical world, and then you can click on the link here if you want to know what the medical world's definition is of split personality disorder. What in red, what's written in red is important. Esoterically, this disorder is the astral body or spirit, or better said spirit, creating multiple versions of itself. General reasons are the same as in the article. For example, childhood trauma and stuff like that. If the quote-unquote mirror images are dealt with and eliminated, then the person can be healed more effectively, which is completely true. Okay. Yeah, the description speaks for itself. I'm assuming that I don't have to give any elaboration on this. Okay. That's the definition esoterically. Okay. When someone has schizophrenia, so split personality disorder specifically, the person's astral body is like shattered essentially. It's broken, and it creates multiple, not literally broken, but in a matter of speaking, it creates multiple versions of itself. And these versions obviously are much weaker than the actual astral body. Okay. And the reasons I already said are generally speaking, if horrible stuff happened to someone, for example, someone is traumatized by the fact that they were poor. I mean, growing up so poor that didn't even have food to eat. They didn't even have normal clothes. They just had holes in their clothes and all of that. And it had a profound traumatic effect on the person. And the person suffers from split personality disorder because the person becomes that mentally ill. The person in his or her mind is going to create an alter ego, and that alter ego will essentially be the exact opposite of that trauma that the person had to deal with. So yeah, you were poor, so the person creates in his or her own mind a wealthy banker. So in this person's mind, hey, you know what? I'm a wealthy banker. You know, I own this and that. I own like several towers here and there across the world. Blah blah blah. That's what it means. Okay. So every influence the person takes is taken from something that has a correlation to the real world. So it has a sick, twisted, deformed, or hopelessly corrupted, so to speak, source, a root cause, if you will. The thing is that the root is hopelessly infected. But yeah, that is that. There is a movie here. I'm also going to link that in the description below. There is an interesting movie that serves as a perfect example. I forgot the name of the movie, but you can find the movie in the description, like I said. I'm going to specifically describe it in such a way that you'll immediately know that, hey, that link is the link to the movie that Morino is talking about. Okay, it's a nice movie. Long story short, the actor John Cusack plays in it. And long story short, it's about someone that's mentally ill, a serial killer or something, and the person is being treated by a group of psychologists or psychiatrists, and the person has severe split personality disorder, and the person has like 8 or 9 personalities, and the actor John Cusack, he plays one of these personalities. I forgot the name. The movie is a really nice movie, but it's an old movie, like from the 90s or something, or the 2000s, early 2000s. And John Cusack plays one of the personalities, and the psychologists essentially pit all of these personalities against each other, and they thereby effectively eliminating them. Okay, just the same way that I described here. It's a general psychology practice to the point where the only personality that is left is the actual guy that they're treating. Again, the movie is an interesting movie. You should definitely check it out if you haven't done so already, and if the subject interests you, even superficially, it's really interesting. And yeah, that's essentially it. Uh, Last but not least, I'm going to close off with bipolar disorder. Also, click here if you want to see the definition by the medical world, and here the esoteric description. Esoterically, this disorder is the astral body being corrupted in a specific way. Again, the reasons are the same as in general as mentioned in the article, e.g. childhood trauma. And yeah, I'm going to briefly elaborate here, okay? That's your spirit being corrupted in a specific way, in such a way that it simply displays erratic behavior. Generally speaking, what happens is that here, in this specific thing here, in this specific section, okay, the the pathway isn't necessarily obstructed, but the person's spirit is corrupted, and thereby normal thoughts turn into infected thoughts, if you will, so bad thoughts, and both spill on over, okay? And they become combined essentially. Imagine a good thought being combined with a bad thought, and then it simply spills over. It creates, it simply follows the pattern and the outline I described, the exact way in which I described, and it simply becomes a reality. And as a result or consequence, you have the person acting out. So the person is normal 1 second, as in completely coherent and normal and just, the average person. And then all of a sudden the person starts behaving, like a nut. The person starts throwing with stuff, the person starts screaming, you name it. The person is happy 1 second and literally depressed the other. Yeah, that's essentially how it goes. So yeah, I want to say I hope that this was informative, but I know it was. Uh, Catch you guys later, and bye bye. If there are any questions, then I'll hear it, of course, in the comment section. Bye bye, guys. Bye bye.